Hello everyone. So I'm a little on the shaky side today. I took some albuterol for my lungs because I've been sick for like a month. Albuterol is, in case you're not familiar with it, a rescue inhaler. It's a stimulant and it always gives me the shakes. I don't know if it gives other people the shakes, but it always gives me the shakes. And so I've been really shaky and just kind of not in the greatest of shape tonight, which is fine. Albuterol, by the way, is baby safe, so baby's doing great. Everything's good there. I feel like hell. But I always feel like hell at this point, so it's like, okay, it's just another night of hell. It's just a slightly different flavor of hell tonight, so that's all cool. I've wanted for quite some time to make a video about this subject, and I've been kind of figuring out how to go about doing that. It's something that affects a lot of people that nobody ever talks about, and so, I mean, like I think it's like 10% of women at least get affected by this, and that's kind of high, and nobody ever talks about it. I didn't actually really know about it at all, and so I remember struggling with this and not knowing what was going on, and that was really rough. So I wanted to make a video talking about this issue. There's a lot of issues packed into it. It's just kind of a mess, but I'll try and give you guys good information. For those of you who are new to my channel, also, gosh, before I get too much into anything, thank you everybody who's been subscribing lately. Like, I don't know where y'all coming from, but thank you. Like, I did not see this coming. I did not expect this. I'm honored. Thank you. And thank you also to all the people who have been writing comments. It's been wonderful, like, interacting with everybody who's dropped by and said hi and told me their stories, and this is good. This is really awesome. I appreciate it. I'm kind of under, like, sort of house arrest because I'm too sick to go out and do anything, so it's good to hear from everybody. It's been really nice, actually. But anyway, onto the subject. I'm trying to get through this one quickly because there's so much that happened. I'm talking about a large stretch of time, and it would be very easy for me to get distracted, and I don't want to do that, so I'm trying not to do that. Also, I'm hopped up on legal stimulants, and it's very easy for me to be distracted because of that. Somehow I get the feeling that, like, half the editing process for this video is just going to be me taking out all the times I had to stop for a coughing fit, but, you know, again. So anyway, for those of you who are new to the channel, I went absolutely out of my gourd crazy for like 2 years. I went crazy. Just crazy for 2 years. It was not a good time. I was not having a fun time. I was not happy. I continued to post videos throughout that time, although they were very irregular because I was struggling a lot. And it was a messy, messy time in my life. I was not mentally well. I was very keenly aware that I was not mentally well. I was trying very, very hard to recover, and it just wasn't working out for me. Like, it was not happening. It was a messy, messed up time in my life. And I feel like I need to talk about that because there's so much information there that people are not aware of. And that's, number one, I feel like I owe it to everybody who's been staying with the channel this whole time and watching me go from moderately sane, like ADHD, pretty quirky, but otherwise, you know, eccentric but stable, to, oh, hey, I'm just going to spend a couple years being batshit crazy, to wherever I am now, which is very pregnant, very knocked up, sick, and hopped up on stimulants to help me breathe. I swear this is an improvement. Yeah, for 2 years, just 2 years, I went nuts. And so if you go back through my videos for that time frame, and it's not a particularly clearly defined time frame, but if you go back over my old videos, there was a lot of stuff about me getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder. You know, that was a whole big thing. I still talk about that now because it's very recent. What happened was I was losing my mind, and so I went into a therapist. Now, I tried multiple therapists, and I don't seem to do very well with therapy. Like, it's not something I feel like I'm ever going to try again. But I did try going into this one lady who came very highly recommended. She was local, so I could actually reach her, and I wanted to be actually in the office talking with the person because I thought maybe that would help instead of like video conferencing. And so I went in, and she had like 30 plus years of experience, and you know, everybody said she was good, so I was like, okay, here go, I'm gonna try this out. And she, after several sessions that didn't seem to lead anywhere, at least to me, told me that I had bipolar disorder. And I laughed at her because I thought she was joking. And then I found out she was serious. So I went home and I read everything I could about bipolar disorder, because I never would have guessed that I had bipolar disorder. Like, I just looked at it, was like, if I have bipolar disorder, where have all the symptoms of bipolar disorder been hiding all these years? Because, like, if you know about bipolar, and I didn't know much, but I had a baseline understanding, it usually starts up when a person's in their very late teens, early 20s. That's when it usually starts. That's when the first episode usually kicks in. Now, there are recorded cases of people going through a pregnancy and then developing bipolar disorder after the pregnancy as a result of the pregnancy. And I had gone through a pregnancy, but I'm 37 years old right now. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I am in many ways just too old to be developing bipolar disorder, or at least normal bipolar disorder. There's still the possibility that maybe it's happening, that, you know, again, that I had the symptoms and that I just wasn't aware of them because either they were mild enough that they weren't too disruptive, or I just wasn't paying close attention. I tended to lead, before I met my husband, I had a very solitary lifestyle, so, you know, maybe I was having bipolar episodes and there was just no one around to notice. I tried so hard to be really open-minded about bipolar, and so I read everything I could read, and I went back to my therapist and I was like, I have a copy of the DSM diagnostic criteria, and I do not have any of the symptoms listed in the DSM diagnostic criteria for bipolar disorder. So please help me to understand this, because I want to get better and I want to treat whatever's going on here, but I do not see how this here that I'm struggling with is bipolar disorder. So you're my therapist. You got to help me kind of connect these dots here. And she basically just said, oh, well, I have 30 years experience and I know what bipolar disorder looks like, and you definitely have bipolar disorder. Which I then asked her if there were any articles I could read about cases that were similar to mine, any case studies that matched up with mine, anything at all that would help me to deepen my understanding of what the hell was happening to me. Because at that point I was struggling with suicidal thoughts. I had been struggling with suicidal thoughts. I went into therapy because I was struggling with suicidal thoughts. And it was like, you know, I want to drive my car off a cliff, and that's bad. And I know that's bad. And I can't seem to stop thinking about it, and that's bad. And I really should probably get some help before I do something stupid, because that would be bad. So I mean, I'm in therapy. I'm doing the thing you're supposed to do, right? Like, it seems like so much of my life I'm sitting around going, I tried to do the thing you're supposed to do. I really did. I don't know why it doesn't always work out for me like that, but in this particular case, I was trying really hard. She seemed a little bit off-put that I would be asking for case studies or articles or just any further reading or information on how to manage my bipolar disorder. Like, why would you need any of that? It's like, well, I don't know why I wouldn't. I read constantly. I learn constantly. I don't have anything better to do than learn a bunch of random facts about this thing that apparently I have, so I need to know everything. Like, I need to go out and have my little research session and, you know, learn and really hyper-focus on this. Again, probably very ADHD. Probably. Very prone to hyperfocus. Give me a subject that's interesting and I'll just like light up like a little Christmas tree. Oh, my apologies. I know I sound horrible. My voice, I don't even want to think about it, but whatever. She didn't give me any more reading material. I went home and I started looking for any situation of any case of any bipolar at all that looked anything like me. So basically, what does it look like when someone has bipolar disorder without actually having any of the symptoms of bipolar disorder? Any of them. Any at all. I did find some interesting, very strange, weird things that seemed kind of, sort of, almost like me. It's like there's a pre-bipolar condition that people can sometimes develop where they haven't had their first bipolar episode, but they're a little bit on the hyper energetic side. Now, I mean, I have ADHD, so I'm naturally on the hyper energetic side most of the time, except when I'm pregnant because I feel like hell. But you know, so there was that, and I looked at that. I was like, okay, well, maybe I do have this. Maybe that's what she's picking up on with her 30 years of experience and her clear understanding of the field that I don't actually have any training in. So, hey, I'm going to listen to the professional. I'm going to listen to my doctor, and I'm going to assume that she knows what she's talking about. So then I was like, okay, I have bipolar disorder. I'm going to treat my bipolar disorder, right? And so I read everything I could on managing bipolar disorder, and it was the most frustrating exercise I have devised for myself in quite a long time, because it was always about managing symptoms that I have never had. So, what do you do when everything that you read about managing your illness is all about the symptoms that you don't have? What about the symptoms that you do have? Except you don't have any symptoms. But you do have the illness because you've got a doctor telling you, and they're a professional with 30 years of experience that they keep reminding you about constantly. Like, oh, I have 30 years of experience. I know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm listening to you. I'm trying. How do I manage this illness? Like, I just want to not be suicidal anymore. That would be really cool. So, how do I manage it? Like, how do I take care of myself here? Because I gotta be able to function on a day-to-day basis. Like, my job, my work life is being destroyed. My home life is being destroyed. My marriage is falling apart. Everything in my life is being affected by this. I need to get my shit under control. How do I do that? Well, you know, many thousands of dollars of therapy later, nothing had gotten better. It's because I didn't have bipolar disorder. I've never had bipolar disorder. I never will have bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is it's a mood disorder, but it has to do with the way your brain works, and my brain doesn't work that way. So I will never contract bipolar disorder. Ever. It's just, yeah, it's not for me. Sorry. What I did have, I never really looked at. I never really thought about it. I didn't really consider that was a possibility for me. And I found that out after leaving my therapist and telling her I wanted to seek a second opinion. I've talked about her with a few people, and I've always been kind of like, I don't know what this woman was thinking. Like, I don't know who the heck this lady helps. And they're like, well, I'm sure she helps some people. It's just that you two weren't a good match. I don't think I'm a good match with anyone therapeutically. Like, I'm going to go out and say that. Like, I don't think therapy is for me. And I got a lot of different reasons for that. I could make a whole video. I'm not going to waste your time. It's just not my thing. It's not my cup of tea. Some people benefit from therapy. I am tired of people telling me that I would benefit from therapy when it does not work for me. It does not work for me. But yeah, I ended up going, after leaving therapy, I was pretty depressed because it was like, okay, I think my life is just going to be like this for the rest of forever. I'm going to have these mood problems. I'm probably going to have to deal with the suicidal thoughts. All these bad things that are happening in my life, these are the new normal. And I actually made this video talking about how, like, this is the new normal. This is what my life is like. My life is just going to be horrible for the rest of forever because there's no cure for whatever I've got. There's no solving whatever I've got. I've done all the things that you're supposed to do to make whatever I've got better, and it's not working. I'm out of solutions. I think this is just going to be me for the rest of forever. And I was so utterly disheartened when I made this video because I was like, I'm never going to be me again, and I really miss me. I never knew how much I liked being me until I stopped being able to be myself. And I became this other person, and I don't like this person that I've become. And I didn't know how to fix that. I didn't know what to do about that. I ended up going to my general practitioner. I was like, okay, look, I do not have bipolar disorder. I'm very certain of this. I don't have a thyroid disorder because we tested for that already. I don't know what else there is to test for, but you gotta test me for something because I don't want to live anymore. I do not want to live anymore. And something has gone horribly wrong with me because I was just okay. I was perfectly fine for most of my life. And then about 2 years ago, something happened and it was like a switch got flipped and I just stopped being myself. And I don't recognize this person that I am. And I don't want to live as this person anymore. Like, I don't want to be alive anymore. And luckily, my general practitioner is an excellent doctor. Like, we're very lucky that we can go to him. He was the doctor that my husband went to when he knew that he was having trouble. We didn't know it was a brain tumor at the time. And he was the one who was like, yeah, you know, I'm hearing your concerns. Statistically speaking, a young man your age should not be having the problems you're having, so it's probably not what you think it is, but let's just test it and find out anyway, and sure enough, a brain tumor. So I'm really, like, my husband at the time, it's been a few years, but at the time was too young to have a brain tumor. But sometimes young men get brain tumors, and that was what had happened. And this doctor listened to my husband, took his concerns seriously, did the testing on him, and found that something had gone wrong. And I don't know if he was the one who identified the brain tumor. He definitely was the one who referred my husband to an endocrinologist. That's who it was. Referred my husband to the endocrinologist that he's working with now to try and fix all of the damage that brain tumor did to him, because it did a number on him. And so when I went to him and I was telling him about what happened to me, like, he stopped me midway through and he was like, you know, I know what you have. And I was like, okay. And he hands me this sheet, this sheet of paper with this list of symptoms on it. And I would go down the list, and I had just about, I think, every single symptom on that sheet. The whole thing. I had it all. He told me I was a classic case, and I looked at it, I was like, yep, that's a classic case. This is me. This is what's going on. He's like, there's a pill we can give you to fix this. And I have never in my life ever sat in a doctor's office before that day and said, yes, give me the medicine. This time I was like, how soon can you get that in me? How soon can you give me that pill? I want it. I want it now. I want it as soon as possible. I don't want to live like this anymore. The sooner you can get that stuff in me, the sooner you can fix me, the sooner you can get me up and running again. Dude, I want that now. And so they put me on that medication. I am currently, at this point in time, and I'm trying not to bounce around too much timeline-wise. I do have to just go back to the beginning and start there at some point. But currently, where I now stand, I am free of all medications. Like, obviously I'm taking prenatal vitamins and shit, but, you know, I'm clear of all medications. I am, you know, I'm feeling good. I'm grumpy because I'm sleep deprived and I'm tired, but, you know, I'm pregnant. So, I mean, for someone who's pregnant, I'm very stable. I do have mood swings. Sometimes I'll just burst into tears and I'll be crying, like just bawling, and my husband will look at me, he's like, everything okay? It's like, I'm just so happy. Pregnancy is like that. That's normal. That's very normal. So it's like, okay, I'm as sane as any woman can be when she's pregnant. But the thing is, I'm recovered. I got through it. I got over it. The medication actually did what it needed to do. I am so like, I can't imagine what I would have done without that doctor, because I was not in good shape, and I had a plan to kill myself. I did. I really did, and I had a backup plan in case that one didn't work. And when I went into his office and told him I don't want to live like this anymore, I really, really meant it. It was not a good time for me back then. What I had affects about 10% of women, and nobody ever talks about it, so I need to talk about it. I need to let people know that this is a thing that happens. That's important. But in order to talk about that, I got to go all the way back to the beginning. about how this first started, because it takes a while to really pop up in your life. People don't just, generally speaking, people don't just go to bed one evening and then wake up the next morning batshit crazy. Usually there's something that kind of triggers it or builds up to it, or, something, You don't just, generally speaking, you don't expect that to be the case, where it's like, well, I was fine on Tuesday, but now it is Wednesday. I'm just insane. So I want to talk about, like, how this all started, what caused everything to fall into place. I think that's important, but it's delicate, because for me there's a lot of taboo around talking about this subject. And so if I underinform when it comes to some of the beginning issues that caused this, it is because I was very badly hurt, but I don't feel comfortable talking about some of these issues. And I don't know if it's actually my place to talk about some of these issues. So, back at the beginning, husband and I got married, everything was great. Husband was the man of my dreams. Like, just, he still is, but, he was really just everything I had ever wanted in a man. And everything was good. We decided to have a kid. Everything was good. We decided to have another kid because we want to have a lot of kids, because the dude is sexy. It's like, I want him to get me pregnant as much as I can. And so we had another kid. I think it was around that second, the pregnancy with the second baby. We're still sort of pinning down the timeline. That's when the brain tumor started up. And it's something I didn't want to talk about, because there are a lot of red pill, manosphere guys who go on my channel and watch my videos. And honestly, let's be very fair. Let's be very clear. Most of them are good people. I have enjoyed the talks that I've had with a lot of the red pill guys that I have talked to. Okay? Majority of them, cool guys. Awesome. I like men, so this is good. There are some guys who are pretty damn misogynistic in the red pill community. And a lot of them, I don't think they realize how misogynistic they are. They talk about women like women are objects or animals or mindless things. Like, they don't have any respect for women. And they look at me and they totally see me as a woman, so it's like, well, fuck that bitch, right? She's only good for one thing, right? And that attitude comes through loud and clear. I didn't for a long time, and I still don't honestly feel comfortable talking about any unhappiness that I might have with my marriage. Granted, that's generally not a problem, because generally I'm very happy with my marriage. But there was a while, when the brain tumor started up, it affected him very deeply. And that's something I don't expect people to really understand unless you've had a relative who's had a brain tumor. And I mean, this wasn't a cancerous brain tumor. It was a very small, very minor brain tumor, but it's still just, it affected his life profoundly. He changed. He stopped being him. He stopped being the man I married, and he became this other person. And that's always a very scary thing. Like, really scary. And a lot of, I went online and I tried to find any information that I could. What's going on? Why is my marriage suddenly so unhappy? And I got a lot of, well, once the honeymoon period is over, and a lot of stuff like that. It's like a lot of it just kind of bounced back toward me. It's like, you need to adjust your expectations. You need to realize that you're not going to have those happy, giddy feelings around your spouse all the time. You need to realize that once the honeymoon period's over, the relationship deepens and grows and turns into, whatever it's supposed to be for the rest of your lives and all this cool stuff. That was the information I kept finding. That was the advice I kept finding. And of course, I didn't feel comfortable talking with anyone about the fact that I was unhappy in my marriage. Number one, that's always kind of a taboo thing. It's always been taboo for me. you know, it kind of destabilizes the marriage in a lot of ways, and I just didn't want to do that. And also, I didn't have like a support network or a friend network or people that I could go to where it was like, hey, I'm experiencing like a lot of trouble in my marriage and I don't know why. And like I can't go to my parents. I don't always have the best relationship with them. I had a friend, like one friend, and I trusted this person completely. Yes, it was a man because I hang out with men a lot, but I trusted him completely, and I would go to him and I felt like I was just always bitching about my husband. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just really unhappy. I don't know why I'm unhappy. You know, I don't know what's going on. And I'm pretty sure it's me, probably me, but I'm really, really unhappy in my marriage. And, you know, you definitely don't ever want to talk with red pill guys about that. There is no way. Number one, if you're a man talking with red pill guys about that, they're going to tell you to ditch the bitch and go find someone better because, you know, you deserve a real woman or a good woman or whatever. And women are obviously just replaceable things to a lot of these guys. Not all red pill guys, but the misogynistic ones are in there. And when you talk with one of them, they are so just blatantly misogynistic. It's amazing. Like, whoa, dude. You totally just have no problem dehumanizing half of the population on the globe. And you don't see any problem with that. None. Like, you don't see any problems with that at all. What it must be like to live inside your mind. But anyway, yeah, so if you're a guy and you actually care about your wife and you love your marriage, just be aware that when you talk to red pill guys, sometimes they're going to give you some really bad advice. Now, if you're a woman and you're deeply dissatisfied with your marriage and a red pill guy happens to catch wind of it, number one of two things is going to happen. Thing number one, he's going to demonize the heck out of you, post all sorts of really abusive language at you, and tell you what a horrible person he thinks you are till the cows come home. He's definitely not going to help you, that's for sure. And thing number two, he's going to think, oh, hey, I can get in on that because her man isn't strong enough or alpha enough or, you know, whatever. And I can go in there and I can, you know, fuck this woman because she's in a bad place in her marriage. I can take advantage of this, which is also really fucking pathological. So I didn't feel like talking about it, but I was just... And the thing was, it wasn't like he was entirely gone. He'd have these moments where I could see him in there, and I just held on for those moments. And I was doing anything that I could think of to try and get things better again. So, like, he kept on saying that he was really tired and he didn't feel well, right? Because he had a brain tumor. And so I was constantly trying to figure out ways to improve our diet and make sure that he was getting good exercise because that can help raise a person's energy levels. And, you know, make sure that he got plenty of sleep and try to keep the house clean for him because that helped him kind of feel more relaxed and calm inside the house. I was trying to do anything I could think of, and I was reading all these articles in, like, women's magazines, like how to make your spouse, like, happy, like, shit like that. I was doing everything I could think of. I was doing it for such a long time. I did it for years. Everything I could think of. I would go to him and I would tell him, look, I'm really unhappy. Can we please do something about this? And he would tell me that me being unhappy with some of the things going on right then, that was my fault. That was a problem with me. And I'm sitting there like, I don't think this is normal. I think that something's wrong. No, problems with you. I'm very sure of it. And so, you know, half a decade of me being deeply unhappy with our relationship and just telling myself, look, it's just a rough patch. He's just working really hard to support the family. He's just really tired. This is just a bad time. That's all. It's just a bad time. and things are going to get better, and you just need to hold on until things get better, right? 5 years. And there was a downward progression that happened there, where it was like, at first I'd have these bursts of energy where I'd work and work and work and work and work as hard as I could to try and do everything as perfectly as I could to try and get some glimmer of the person he used to be back, because I missed him and I loved him. And then it wouldn't work. And I'd start to get frustrated and disheartened. And then I'd get angry. And then I'd just stop working and stop caring and fuck it all, I don't care. Let the house go to hell, I don't care. And then I'd kind of pull myself back together and be like, okay, you can't do that. Because, we have to make this work. And I'd go to him and I'd talk to him, and he'd be like, you know what, things are going to get better. I can really feel it. Things are going to get better this year. Things are going to improve. I'm really working on it. Things with work are getting better. Things with our money situation is getting better. Like, it's going to be better. Don't worry. And I'd look at him and I'd get excited and hopeful and be like, yeah, things are going to get better. And another year would go by. And another year, and another year, and another year. Things are going to get better, don't worry. Things are going to get better. Toward the end, I remember sitting in this room, staring at that wall right there, and asking myself, what are you going to do when you wake up and it's been 10 years? And you've been unhappily married for 10 years. And you're not young anymore. And you're not pretty anymore. And your dating currency is just shot to hell. And you're not going to find someone new to build a life with. What are you going to do when that day comes? And I remember staring at the wall and thinking, you know what, I'm going to deal with that day when it comes. And not before. Until then, I'm just going to hold on tight, and we're going to get through this. Whatever this is, we're going to get through this. And I mean, that sounds crazy and stupid and illogical, because I didn't recognize the man I was married to anymore. But there was still just enough of him every once in a while. And we were going through life together. Years were going by. We bought this house together. He was tired, he was sick, he didn't feel good, but he made it happen because he wanted to take care of me and the kids. And we were so excited, There were so many things that we went through in our lives, like life milestones that we went through together where, yeah, he was sick, yeah, he didn't feel good, yeah, things were really rough. But, he was as excited as he could be. He was as present as he could be. And, we were building a life together. We moved in here and it was like, hey, do you want to have another kid? It's like, yeah, let's have another kid. Let's do that. And we had a son. And it's like, hey, let's have another son. And we got pregnant and it was another son. And then that baby was terminally ill. And the two of us kind of had to pull ourselves together and deal with the fact that our baby was dying. And we kind of, united and did that team thing together that we're actually a pretty damn good team together. And so, we're doing this. And I was so distraught because my baby was dying. And he took care of me when I couldn't eat. I stopped being able to eat. Because I was just so deeply lost in grief for what was happening. And the only thing I could really stomach if I really pushed myself was chicken nuggets. And so I remember him taking me to, fast food places like McDonald's, just various chicken places, and getting chicken nuggets just to make sure that I actually ate something every couple days, because otherwise I couldn't do it. And it's like, you don't leave someone like that. You don't leave someone who's held your hand when you were lying in a pool of your own blood. Like literally in a pool of my own blood. I cannot begin to emphasize to you just how much damn blood I was lying in and how deep it was. I was coated in it. I was absolutely soaked in blood. And I was alive. I made it. I survived. And he was right there by my side, holding my hand. And I remember thinking that of all the people in all the world, I would not want to have any other human being by my side holding my hand in that moment. You don't leave someone like that. You make it work. You figure out what's wrong, you stick it through the tough times, and you make it work. And so for a very long time, I just did not feel comfortable talking about the fact that I was very unhappy in my marriage in certain ways, in certain areas. Obviously, like, we had kids together, like, there were things about our marriage that were good. It was just, there was a lot that was not good, and we didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. And a lot of what that brain tumor did to him is not my story to tell. That's his story to tell. And so, like, it did things to him. Like, it messed him up in so many ways. And I just don't feel like that's something that I am in a place where I can talk about it. But I remember at one point, like, we were talking about everything, and he said that he could see that I was just drifting farther and farther away from him, because he could tell just by the look on my face and the look in my eyes that I had gotten to a point where I was just completely emotionally detached. Like, I had gone from trying really hard to frustrated to resentful, and then after resentment, there's this point where you just stop caring. And I had just stopped caring. And he looked at it and it's like, okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with me, because he's talked about this with me too, like, apparently, like, when you have it and when it's going on, you don't feel like anything is wrong. And other people can tell you something's wrong and you think they're full of it. And that's what was happening. Like, I was going to him, I'm like, something's wrong. And he's like, you're wrong, you know. And so he could tell that I was deeply unhappy, and he didn't think there was anything wrong with him, but, you know, he went and he found this doctor that I mentioned earlier, and the doctor did some tests at my husband's request, and sure enough, they found something. And it was a brain tumor. And that's when I finally had that day that I woke up and I realized it had been half a decade and time had passed. And I felt so detached from him, and I didn't know if I could ever rebuild the emotional closeness that I had with him when we were dating, when we were newly married, before the brain tumor came, because I was so walled off. In the years since all this drama went down, I was exposed by someone to attachment theory, and so I started reading up a little bit on attachment theory. And I look at my relationship pattern before I met my husband, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it? And I need to learn more about it. But the anxious avoidant kind of does fit me pretty well, where I was wandering through my life and I wasn't attaching myself to anyone. Like, I just didn't care about people. I didn't get that close to them. I didn't open up to them. I definitely didn't trust them. And I had good reason not to trust people. Like, I could give you hours of examples on why I learned not to trust people. Like, not a very trusting person. I try to be a trustworthy person. I believe that that's important. But do I trust people? Let's just put it this way. When I was 20 years old, my boyfriend found out that I wanted to become an exotic dancer, and so instead of telling me that he didn't want me to become an exotic dancer, he had one of his friends come over and rape me. Because he thought that would teach me a lesson. Do I trust people? Are you fucking kidding me? No, I don't trust people. My parents, God. I love my parents, but my parents we don't always have the best of relationships. I can't trust them for anything. I can't rely on them for anything. I know that. Why am I talking about this? Well, I think this plays a role in this whole mess that came about. My husband had a brain tumor for 5 years. He went from being this man that I loved, that I was willing to marry, that I overcame my deep sense of distrust in people, to build this really deep relationship with. Like, that was hard for me. That was scary for me. It was really scary to let myself open up and be vulnerable to this person. But I did it. And I loved him. And then he completely changed into somebody else. And for 5 years, I'm unhappy in our marriage, and he's a different person. And then we find out, oh, it was a brain tumor. We can fix it, which is great. Like, that was exciting. But it was also terrifying, because by that point, I had closed down again. I distanced myself from him. I'd reverted to those habits of, I don't want to rely on you. I don't trust you. You've broken my trust. So now I don't want to open up to you. I don't want to set myself up to get hurt again. So I don't know how much I'm willing to invest in you anymore. Not a great place to be in a marriage. Not at all. And I think that this whole attachment style thing kind of does play a role in it, because that was a pattern that I exhibited for a very long time. Either I trust you, which is a very, very rare and difficult thing, because that's a thick wall you got to cross. Does not happen with many people. Very, very few people. Or I don't trust you, and I'll be nice to you, and I'll be friendly to you, and I like you, but I'm never going to relax completely around you, because I'm not stupid. I know what people will do to me. I've seen it. People have done some really messed up things to me. I'm not going to relax around you. So my husband went from I'm completely relaxed, I trust you 100%, to, I don't think I trust you. Nope, I don't trust you. Our marriage was falling apart. Like, our marriage was just on the brink of falling apart. I wanted out of the marriage at that point. I even told my husband I want a divorce. I can't do this. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to trust you again. I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to trust you again. I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to let my guard down around you again. And I was so hurt, because I knew that this person was my favorite person in the whole entire world. I had never trusted anyone the way I trusted him. I had never let my guard down around anyone the way I let my guard down around him. And I had never found anyone who made me feel so safe. Sorry about that. I got emotional there for a minute. I had to wipe my face off. I wish I could breathe. This would be so much easier if I could breathe easily. Like, God, this would be so much easier. I'm really kind of struggling here. So anyway, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust him again. I didn't know if I'd be able to do that. And I couldn't really feel love for him if I couldn't even feel trust for him. Like, it was all this cold, dark, unpleasant, I don't want to go there kind of area in my mind. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to build a relationship like the one I had with my husband with anyone else. And so it was like, well, I don't see any good way out of this situation that I'm in right now. And thinking about that usually caused me to have like a lot of anxiety. And so, I would be sort of panicky. I'd go to work and I'd be panicky, and whenever I had a moment to think, like whenever I was thinking and those thoughts kind of crossed my mind, it was like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know. I don't think I can fix my marriage. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And I was a complete neurotic mess. I know my childhood was super messed up, and I know I went through a lot of really, for lack of a better term, fucked up shit when I was a kid. And I know that I was really, really messed up when I got out of that. I know I was. But this mess that I went through for 2 years, that was a real close second that was the worst I had ever been in my adult life, because at that point, I didn't feel like I had any hope at all. Like, it's too late, you're too old, you can't start over again, you can't build a new life for yourself, you can't start fresh. Like, you have 4 kids. How are you going to get a divorce? Who's going to take care of your kids? You have responsibilities. You have duties to other people. You aren't going anywhere. If you can't rebuild what you had with him, you're just going to have to suck it up and deal with the fact that you're going to spend the rest of your life pretty much alone. And honestly, it's possible that there's no scenario here where you're not going to spend the rest of your life alone. Of all the days to make this video, I decided, hey, I'm going to do it on the day that I'm sick and sleep deprived and pregnant. What was I thinking? Anyway, I'm a mess, and I'm sorry about that. But at least I'm a sane mess, because we figured out what was wrong with me, because there were a few things that were wrong with me at that point. Like, obviously. It was around that time that I started going to my therapist, and she was like, oh, bipolar disorder. So we had that whole circle of drama where I was really trying to get better because I was just sinking further and further, and nothing I did was pulling me out of it. And the thing that I tend to be rather confident about, perhaps overconfident, is the fact that I know what depression feels like, because I spent most of my childhood being depressed with very good reason. Like, I feel kind of confident that I know how to dig myself out of depression. And then on top of that, you know, we had the abortion. I had to dig myself out of just how completely grief-stricken I was by that. I dug myself out of that. That was cool. I couldn't dig myself out of this one. And I tried real hard. And no matter what I tried and no matter what I did, it wasn't working. And so I was like, well, I can't tackle this on my own, so I'll go to therapy. And therapy definitely didn't help one damn bit. So that was a waste of time and money. And I didn't know what was wrong with me entirely. I didn't know how I was going to get better. A lot of my problems had to do with my circumstances and my relationship with my husband. We got into couples therapy, but that wasn't really helping me. I think it helped him. It helped reassure him that, like, hey, you both are very invested in this relationship. It's not like one of you is trying to walk away. Like, you're going to make it work. You have to be patient. You have to be willing to work with each other. You have to give it some time, and you have to be working your way to building a connection with one another. And so, like, that was good. That was good. But it was still, like, it was rough. And then there was something else that I didn't really fully even feel an awareness of. It was just a thing. I wasn't aware of it entirely. I tried not to think about it. And that's the thing that my doctor noticed when I came in and told him that he needed to test me for something because something was clearly wrong. It turns out that I had a condition called hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is kind of a mouthful, so we'll just say HSDD. HSDD happens a lot of the time in older women who are going through, like, menopause, hormonal changes, things like that. But it can also happen in women who have a partner who's gone through a chronic illness, like a brain tumor. I don't know what it's like in other women's cases, because I suspect every case is different and there are varying severities. Depression often accompanies it. So I had gotten the depression that comes with it. And so the depression was just knocking me over sideways. But the HSDD, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to adjust a bit. Like, ooh, somebody is just really sitting kind of against my rib cage in a less than pleasant way. I might get a pillow and lean back on it here. Yep, I'm going to get like a pillow or a blanket or something. Oh, wow, that helps. Whew, I can take deeper breaths like this. So this is good. This is very good. But yeah, in my case, I had the depression that comes with it, because frequently it's accompanied by depression, and it's one of those weird things where it's chicken or egg. Sometimes the depression comes first, sometimes the HSDD comes first. One can cause the other. In my case, I had the HSDD before I had the depression. And for me, the thing was, I developed a phobia of sex, which is really, really funny because, I mean, I was an exotic dancer for 8 years. I love sex, right? No. No. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle thinking about it. And I didn't even realize it until I got the diagnosis. And then, like, it was really weird because I was like, okay, I have all the symptoms, but this is weird. So I went home and I started looking at porn. And I'm looking through all this porn, like, at all these beautiful, beautiful naked people. And I feel nothing. Like, there is nothing going on. And that was part of the problem. I didn't want to have sex with my husband. I didn't want to be close with my husband. I didn't want to be intimate with my husband. Part of it was I didn't trust him. And so I didn't want to open myself up to him in any way. Like, I wanted to keep that distance. I wanted to keep myself safe, which, if you study attachment theory, is a thing. It's a thing that happens. Part of it was also the fact that after years and years of being unhappy in our marriage, I had just walled myself off more and more and more. And I had, you know, I remember, like, afterwards, I remember going to my husband and telling him that I felt like my sexuality was shutting down. And I could even feel it shutting down piece by piece. And at the time, he looked at it and said, that sort of thing doesn't happen. You're fine. You're imagining it. Same way I was imagining the brain tumor. Which, for those of you who don't fully understand yet, that's not his fault. If you have a tumor inside your brain, it's going to affect you. And so, it's not his fault. So that was the way he reacted, but that was how he reacted. And so when I told him that I was losing my ability to feel sexual desire, to enjoy sexual stimulation, to even, you know, to even think about sex, really, he looked at us and said, that's not a real thing. You're imagining it. It's not a real thing. Turns out it is a real thing. And I had become so averse to thinking about sex that I was actually phobic of sex, which is really funny because then I had my coworker who was like sexually harassed me in the workplace, and everybody's like, well, was he saying sexually inappropriate things to you? It's like, I don't think about sex. Like, how am I supposed to know? I'm not paying attention. If he's flirting with me, I will be the last person to become aware of it because I don't think about sex. So when my doctor said there was a medication they could give me, they gave me bupropion, I think it's called. It's an antidepressant, and I was depressed, so I kind of needed an antidepressant at that point. I was in a mess. But it also apparently sometimes raises libido in some people. And so the goal was, hopefully this side effect of raised libido is going to help you kind of break through that barrier a little bit. That, okay, I don't feel comfortable thinking about sex, so I don't want to think about sex. And I have panic attacks when I do think about sex. Like, hopefully that'll help you just kind of relax that a little bit and open up a little bit and be a little more comfortable around your husband physically. And then you two can start that bonding process where you're being close to each other, being affectionate with each other, and letting your fucking guard down around one another. Oh, so I started taking the medication. And, I mean, there were other medications that I could have taken in case that one didn't work, but luckily that one gave me just it gave me a little tiny foothold. And I even told my husband that's all I needed. All I needed was just a little tiny foothold. I can crawl my way out of this shit. I just need that little tiny foothold. And up until that point, I didn't have any kind of a foothold at all. And the medication really helped. Like, it really did. It gave me just a little bit. That's all I needed, just a little bit of help. And I started working my way out of the depression. I started relaxing enough around my husband to be physically affectionate with him, which of course is something that's evolved as time passed. Oh, are you talking about your sex life? Yes, I'm talking about my sex life. I mean, it was a sex disorder. I had a sexual dysfunction. Of course I'm talking about my sex life. But again, apparently, this affects 10% of women. You know who else it affects? All of those women's partners. So it's actually kind of relevant, because at that point, it's affecting 10% of women and every single guy they're trying to have a relationship with. So, maybe roughly about 10% of men. I don't know. I'm not gonna, that's where the math gets funky for me, and I'm not that good at math, but you get the idea. It affects a lot of people. How many times have I been reading comments and manosphere threads about guys who are like, yeah, my wife just stopped being interested in having sex with me, and after years and years of being lonely, I finally gave up on our relationship. Why do you think that is? What is that? What caused that? What caused your wife to suddenly just lose all interest in sexual activity? There's a few different things it could be, but one of them is HSDD. You know what no one ever talks about? HSDD. No one ever talks about it. No one ever talks about like what happened with my husband and his brain tumor either. But that's a separate issue. And someday maybe he'll come on here and talk about it, but that's again more his story to tell than mine. Thing is, women, about 10% of them, experience HSDD at some point in their lives. Which means if you're a man, because for a long time my audience was primarily men, I don't know what the statistics are lately because things have changed around a bit. But if you're a man or, a lesbian in a relationship with a woman who just stops being interested in sex with you and starts refusing to have sex with you. Sometimes that's power games, because power games happen and that's really unhealthy and pathological. But sometimes she's having a real hard time experiencing sexual feelings. Like, sometimes that's a thing that happens, because it happened to me. And again, 8 years as a stripper. I love sex. This channel, how often do we talk about sex or sex-related things? I love sex, right? So how is this happening to me? Well, it can happen to anyone. That's the thing. It can happen to anyone. And so that's something to be aware of, because it can happen to anyone. One last point, because there are a lot of people online who don't understand mental illness very well. And I've seen this happening with other people, and it's happened a couple times with me, where somebody will look at someone and say, well, they're mentally ill. And they use it as this kind of dismissive thing, like, oh, I don't have to listen to what you have to say because you're mentally ill anyway. So you're crazy. Nobody has to listen to you. Your thoughts are irrelevant, right? Lay people, do not understand how mental illness works. Mental illness is not a pit that you fall into and never climb out of. It's a pit you can fall into totally. And you can fall into it all sorts of different ways, which is why I tend to think that being a little bit sympathetic towards people who are mentally ill, that doesn't mean you can love someone from a distance, Sometimes that's a good thing, right? You don't want to get too close to a person who's a diagnosed narcissist, because they can really hurt you. I've known some people who were kind of sociopathic a little bit. They can kind of hurt you. You don't want to be too close to someone who's suffering from a mental illness that they have not put any time or effort into controlling, because they can hurt you. And I don't mean like violent, like slasher film kind of hurt you. I mean like they can cause a lot of drama in your life. They can really upset you emotionally. They can really upend the balance of your life with their problems. It's difficult. So you kind of have to You kind of have to judge relationships with people and say, forgetting whether or not they're mentally healthy or mentally ill. Is this relationship that I have with this individual healthy, or is it toxic? Because if it's toxic, it doesn't matter if that person is mentally ill or mentally well. The relationship itself is not working. And I need to reevaluate the relationship. But yeah, I see a lot of people who look at me, they're like, well, you're mentally ill anyway, so. And it's like, well, number one, I'm not anymore, actually. I'm off the medications. I feel fine. I'm okay. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm not anxious anymore. I don't have HSDD anymore. We fixed that. I actually made a full recovery. Which, thank God, you know? My husband and I, we patched up our marriage. We decided, hey, let's have another kid. So here I am, and I'm big, fat, and pregnant, and I feel like shit, but it's like, oh, you know what? Thank God, right? We're still together, and everything's okay. It actually turned out okay. I didn't see any scenario in which things actually turned out okay, but sure enough, here we are. And I'm okay. So a lot of people are like, well, I can tell you're mentally ill. Like, I had somebody today. I knew you were mentally ill. It's like, did you now? But I'm not. I have ADHD. I don't classify that as mental illness. I classify that more as like a neurodivergent kind of thing. It's like, you're quirky. You're terminally quirky. You're going to be eccentric till the day you die. Okay, well, cool. I don't mind that. That's not a problem for me. You can look at ADHD and be like, it's a mental illness. And I'll be like, I don't think it's a mental illness. It's a mental quirk. Quirks happen. Everybody's a little bit quirky in some way or another, so this is my quirk. We have a word for it. Big whoop. So, honestly, you know, seeing as how I'm probably never going to go to a therapist again after my most recent experience, I give myself a pretty decent clean bill of health. Like, I don't have any complaints. And that's another thing. Like, I don't have any complaints. My husband doesn't have any complaints. And the thing with mental illness is it becomes a pathology when it interferes with your life. Up until that point, it's subclinical. It's not pathological. You're fine. Maybe you're a little quirky. Maybe you're a little weird. Maybe you have some things that you should probably work on yourself to just make yourself a better, more well-rounded individual. That's cool. But if it's not pathological, if it's not actually interfering with your ability to function on your day-to-day life, you're not sick. And me, I'm not sick. Which is really exciting news, because if I could recover from HSDD, that means other women can recover from HSDD. Might take a little bit more work for other women, depending on their circumstances and their symptoms and how severe their case is, but you know what? I made a full recovery. And so, if you are a woman who's watching this video and you've struggled with HSDD, or suspect you might be struggling with HSDD, do some research, look into it, talk to your doctor. There's medications they can give you. There's things that they can do to help you. You know, don't suffer in silence like I did. I suffered in silence for way, way too long, and it ate me up. And I eventually just ended up completely losing my shit for 2 years. And that's not necessary. Didn't have to go down like that. So, I'm probably going to make other videos about HSDD, like just informative, let's raise awareness kinds of videos, because this affects women, 10% of women, at some point in their lives, and it affects men too. Because if you're married to a woman who develops HSDD and your marriage falls apart, guess what, dude? It's affecting you, big time. And you don't deserve that either. People don't deserve to be suffering because of this. Especially because we do have treatments available. So that's why I'm making this video, why I went crazy for 2 years. This is how I ended up going crazy for 2 years. I developed HSDD because my husband had a brain tumor for half a decade. It's that simple. There was an accompanying depression, I probably had some predisposing factors like my trust issues and my attachment style issues, if that's what that was. I think that's everything right now. I'm having a lot of trouble coughing, and I'm not in the best of shape, and I'm sure I sound... Forgive me for the sound of my voice. I'm sure it's awful. And probably the visual isn't too great either, come to think of it. Anyway, I hope you guys are all in good health, and hopefully this video actually helps some people. Like, I will talk more about this subject, because now that I've kind of broken the seal, I've said the thing, it's out there, I'm probably going to make more videos about it. I think it's important for people to be aware of this, because I think the more people who are aware of this, and it's a really uncomfortable subject to talk about because it's sex, so it's taboo. Nobody wants to talk about their sexual dysfunction. But if we do let people know about it, I think there are a lot of relationships out there with people who are really struggling, who they deserve better. They don't deserve to be struggling like that. And so I'm going to try and, kind of raise some awareness about this one. I'm going to talk about it. It's the best I can do, right? So hopefully this helps you guys, and at the very least, hopefully this kind of clears up for those of you who are wondering, like, yeah, how'd she go crazy for 2 years? Yeah, that's how I went crazy for 2 years. Shit got bad, and I fell apart. Anyway, it's been a long video. Most of it, I think, was just me having coughing fits, so I'll probably be able to edit a lot of that out. But, yeah, I hope you guys are all doing well, and I'll talk to you again in the next video.